Bardzo miło Państwa gościć na naszym panelu Gaz LNG w Europie, szczególnie ten amerykański. Spotykamy się praktycznie w rocznicę pierwszej dostawy amerykańskiego LNG do Polski. Ten wymiar polityki energetycznej stał się nowym wymiarem w relacjach polsko-amerykańskich. Przez wiele poprzednich lat skupialiśmy się głównie na sprawach obrony, bezpieczeństwa. Oczywiście zawsze istniał mocny wymiar ekonomiczny w relacjach polsko-amerykańskich. Wcześniej, podczas tak naprawdę próby, która nie do końca skończyła się sukcesem rewolucji łupkowej, kwestie bezpieczeństwa energetycznego i energii były ważnym aspektem w relacjach, ale tak naprawdę ze względu na to, że rewolucja łupkowa nie spełniła się w 100%, dopiero teraz przy eksporcie gazu ze Stanów Zjednoczonych kwestia energii powróciła na wokandę, na agendę relacji polsko-amerykańskich. Mamy naprawdę świetny panel, uczestników, prelegentów, którzy będą z nami rozmawiać dzisiaj rano i dziękuję Państwu również za tak wcześnie, dołączenie do nas o tak wczesnej porze. Wiem, że wczoraj bankiety trwały do późna w nocy, jak zwykle w Katowicach, więc 9:30 nie jest najłatwiejszą godziną, żeby rozmawiać o tak poważnych sprawach jak bezpieczeństwo energetyczne i współpraca międzynarodowa. Przedstawię pokrótce naszych prelegentów. Minister Naimski, sekretarz stanu, pełnomocnik rządu do spraw strategicznej infrastruktury energetycznej, Kancelaria Prezesa Rady Ministrów. Dla wszystkich, którzy śledzą sprawy związane z polityką energetyczną, pan Naimski jest tą właśnie osobą, z którą należy rozmawiać w tych sprawach w Polsce, więc bardzo się cieszymy, że udało się panu ministrowi do nas dołączyć. Pan Sean Bennett, Deputy Assistant Secretary of Energy for Oil and Gas, U.S. Department of Energy. It's fantastic to have you with us. It's very important to have DOE voice on the panel in this important discussion. It's is this your first time to Poland or? It is, yes. Excellent. Well, welcome to Katowice and welcome to Poland. We look forward to talking with you and making you a strong advocate for this issue back in Washington, D.C. Fred Hutchinson, president of LNG Allies. Fred has been both a partner for the Polish government and for American companies, and he has been someone very much engaged in the policy discussion and also in the practical aspect of the LNG exports from the United States. Fred, it's fantastic to have you with us. Pan Paweł Jakubowski, prezes zarządu Polskie LNG, przedstawiciel polskiego biznesu, który opowie nam o bardzo ważnych sprawach infrastruktury, które pomagają i umożliwiają wprowadzenie strategii, o których będziemy mówili w życie. Bez polskiego LNG, jak również PGNiG, które jest reprezentowane przez pana Rafała Świądera, zastępcy dyrektora oddziału obrotu hurtowego, te strategie byłyby niemożliwe do wprowadzenia. Zacznę od pytania do pana ministra Naimskiego. Rozmawiamy z jednej strony oczywiście o wymiarze ekonomicznym, ale chciałbym zacząć od takiego szerszego poziomu strategicznego. And maybe actually this is a good moment to switch to English, if I may, so we have a little bit more smooth discussion and not the translator doesn't have to interpret everything for the other panelists. Mr. Naimski, if you could tell us at first about Poland's strategy when it comes to energy security, how LNG's imports from the United States or LNG exports from the US fit in our strategy. The Trump administration has liberalized trade in LNG, which is an important step in the bilateral exchange. In the past, the exports were quite more cumbersome. So how these exports fit in Poland's energy security, how this feeds into relations with the US. You have just recently visited Houston with an important MOUs being signed there. How does this help us also within the EU and in gaining greater independence from Russia when it comes to energy? Over to you.
Thank you very much. Thank you, the organizers, for inviting me. You see, the natural gas supplies, this is only part of the energy security issue, but important part. So far, we are dependent on one source if we are talking about import, and the diversification of sources and supply, this is the basis of our strategy since years. And now it's a crucial time and important moment, I would say, and we can achieve a final target. LNG as one of possible supplies is also important matter. As you probably know, all of you, we have operational LNG terminal in Świnoujście with 5 BCM capacity yearly. And we are on a way to construct link between Norwegian shelf, gas fields on the Norwegian shelf through Denmark, under Baltic to Poland. And this is what we are going to achieve by 2022. Time is squeezed, timetables also. We are on a good way to achieve the target. The strategy is important for a series of reasons. First of all, of course, we would like to switch from this dominant supplier to global, let's say, gas market. We'll have completing both investments. I am saying both investments because LNG terminal will be expanded from 5 BCM to 7.5 BCM by 21. So completing those investments will have a basis for real competitive market, gas market in Poland, because we'll have competition between LNG and pipe gas from the shelf. So this will be, 2022, 2030, it will be the beginning of real liberalized market in gas market in Poland, and we are on a way to complete this strategy. We said, we formulated years ago, first diversification, then liberalization. If you are talking about LNG, LNG is a huge potential for Europe. We have a series of LNG receiving terminals in Europe, and they work usually on 23, 25, at most 30% of their capacity. Still, we have in Europe, if we count everything, about 160, 170 BCM of free capacity, which is equal, it's just accidental, of course, but this is equal to import from Russia. And same time, in United States, the prospect is for exporting almost similar amount, similar volume of LNG. which is 180 BCM. Of course, not all of this LNG will go to Europe, and not full capacity of those terminals will be used. But anyway, this is great possibility, and being used, it could change not only the security of supply on a European scale, but it could change politics in Europe as well. There are a series of problems on the way. First of all, political will, of course, on both sides, and specifically on the companies level. But we have to remember that for energy security, the governments are responsible. And in a sense, it starts with the political decisions on the governmental level. This is why gas export in very liberal America is being decided by the government. I think that Polish relations with American companies are very important on at least two levels. On a practical level, because we have this terminal in Świnoujście operational on and booked on about 60% of its capacity, which is, as I mentioned, twice as high as the average in Europe, by the way. But still, PGNiG is able to buy LNG cargoes on spots, which is valuable, which is kind of a diversification, and there is a great opportunity to closer cooperation between our POGC and American producers. And one thing, finally, I believe that there is another platform for cooperation which is not used so far, but open for, really consideration. This is possible investments. There are possible investments, let's say, from POGC or PGNiG or some other Polish companies in America. This direct linkage between producer and consumer might be something which will be in the future productive. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Minister. That was very, very interesting, and it gives us a lot to talk about. The strategy of a diversification first and then liberalization with the focus of LNG that over time could displace Russian export, changing politics in Europe. The importance of US in this context, but also I think something that we should certainly go back to, the idea of investment coming from PGNiG and other Polish companies directly in America, strengthening this bilateral ties. But you did say that gas exports from a very liberal America is decided by government, so this is a good segue to our colleague from the U.S. Department of Energy. Sean, if I can ask you to give us the U.S. perspective, how Europe features in American energy strategy. Secretary Perry, about a year ago, after the first shipment of U.S. LNG to Netherlands and Poland, said that energy policy is also foreign policy. Minister Naimski mentioned clearly the importance of Russia's influence through energy imports to Europe. So over to you for Washington perspective. Thanks.
Oh, thank you. Again, if you were to think, several years ago, who would have thought that, the United States would be exporting LNG to Europe, to Poland, to really anywhere, and it was really caused by the shale revolution. And while the U.S. government plays a role in that, especially DOE, it is American ingenuity of the companies who have really brought this to the forefront. In my role at the Department of Energy, we are the research and development kind of arm for energy here in the United States, and we've actually played a very big role in the shale revolution. It goes back to a lot of early investment in R&D that we provided from the 1970s to the 1990s. And we provided that research and development that allowed American companies to take it and run with it and really commercialize what is now we're facing here today in the shale revolution, which really created about 800 billion cubic meters a year of natural gas development, with about 1,000 billion cubic meters in 2040. So we have this amount of gas that we largely did not believe that we were able to tap into here years ago. And that's really largely because of the shale revolution. And with that, that means that we can look at LNG exports. Years ago, we were looking at bringing LNG imports into the country of the United States. And now we're looking at ways to approve and construct new LNG export facilities to go all around the world to help out our neighbors and our allies. And that's very important to us because, again, we don't want to see energy, and Secretary Perry hit the nail on the head, we don't want to see energy being used as a political hammer. We don't believe that's good foreign policy. And, we want to make sure that our LNG is able to compete in the market and to get out there in case, people do need that liquefied natural gas. So what we've done over the past several years, we have 2 LNG facilities that are operating in the United States, with about 4 more under construction. So we have approved about 214 billion cubic meters per year of LNG exports with no destination clauses, because, again, we feel that the export of LNG is in the public interest. And we stand firmly behind the export authorizations that we have granted thus far. So right now, again, we have those 2 LNG export projects operating and then the 4 other in construction. So that is about 102 billion cubic meters of LNG export capacity per year that we have under construction and operation in the United States. And that is very important for us. As we have seen, again, energy plays an important role in everything that we do. And that is something that we've recognized in the United States. Low energy prices create a good economy. And again, if you want to see investments in manufacturing and so forth, energy prices largely hinge upon a lot of those decisions. So by able to keep the energy costs down, we can have a robust economy based on manufacturing. And I believe, it's not necessarily just in the United States, but around the, globally, that is what's going to make us all very successful.
Thank you very much. It's really remarkable when you look at the debates in the United States, focused just short 8 years ago on imports of energy, and now United States over a short horizon will become or is becoming energy independent with ability to export energy and use it as a totally new foreign policy tool as well. We'll come back to the issues that you raised, because I would like to explore a little bit more, especially the line between US and Europe. I mean, you did say, and of course that's true, that US exports are destined for the global market, and Asia is certainly one of the big markets and recipients, and we should certainly come back to the issue of price of LNG and how price of LNG can impact what we are planning here in Central and Eastern Europe. But before we do that, let me turn to Prezes Jakubowski with really if I can start asking my question with a question about Świnoujście. Minister Naimski mentioned that right now the capacity is 5 billion cubic meters, but with the idea of expanding this to 7.5. What are the plans for Świnoujście? How much of a hub can Świnoujście be for not only Poland but Central and Eastern Europe? And what do you need from the American side in order to make this happen? And frankly, what do you need? I know you have a good working relationship with the Polish government, but what do you need also from the Polish government side to implement those ambitious goals? Over to you.
Thank you very much. First of all, thank you very much for the invitation with such distinguished guests. Speaking about the Mr. Naimski said about Polish strategy, Polish approach towards diversification and liberalization. So after such strategy, there is always a list of projects that has to fulfill the strategy itself. So in our approach, it's really important to say that we are using the concept of so-called Northern Gateway, which consists of 2 projects. First of all, the existing and being expanded LNG terminal in Świnoujście, and secondly, the so-called Baltic Pipe, which is a physical direct connection from the Norwegian continental shelf to Poland and to our region. So in this sense, those 2 projects they have to deliver us the free choice of supplies to Polish market, which means that we can switch freely between major producers for fossil fuels in Europe, and we can choose also the LNG, which is a magnificent tool to take the LNG from any possible producer from all over the world. Having said that, those 2 projects as a Northern Gateway concept are the most crucial in terms of security of supply, in terms of diversification and creation of more competitive market in Poland, but also in the region. It has to be said that Polskie LNG is responsible for the LNG terminal in Świnoujście, but there is also a gas system, our mother company, which is responsible for transmission system in Poland, for the national grid. And together, gas system is responsible for so-called interconnectors with our neighboring countries, such as Lithuania, Ukraine, Slovakia, Czech Republic. The agenda, the schedule for those interconnectors is related to the Northern Gateway concept. And altogether means that the LNG and Norwegian gas can be delivered not only for domestic market in Poland, but can be somehow transported to our partners in the region. For us, it's a matter of cooperation between countries in the region. Speaking about the LNG terminal, on Friday we reloaded the 31st cargo of the LNG to Poland. We received around 28 deliveries from Qatar. We had 2 deliveries from Norway and 1 delivery from the United States, and we are waiting for more. But it means also that the regasification purpose is the main service in LNG terminal, but also the LNG is reloaded on trucks, which is also quite important, because in parallel to the regasification power, we are able to deliver LNG to those places where the distribution grid or transmission grid is not available. So it means that the LNG can be used as a tool for improving the market in Poland and in the region. The LNG can be delivered in those places where there is no any other way to deliver natural gas in this traditional way. Just a small number. The number of reloaded LNG trucks in Poland is at the same level as there is in a gate terminal in Rotterdam or Zeebrugge in Belgium. So, having said that, I'm trying to convince you that there is a huge potential on the Polish gas market. There is a huge potential in the regional gas market, and our task is to deliver a specific list of projects that can create a situation where the market will be developing and improving. So we have to deliver the infrastructure necessary in terms of diversification, increasing security of supply, and to create more competitive energy market, because more sources of supply, more players who can deliver independently energy for our purposes, it creates the situation that we are looking for.
Thank you very much. The staggering number, really, with the trucks transportation of LNG being equal to Port of Rotterdam, and I understand that you have also started transporting LNG via trains and rail, which is another form. I would like to come back to this as well, because we are focusing a little bit now on Poland, but as you said, this is a regional market. We want to develop this as a regional market. The energy security, energy supply is important part of the 3 Cs initiative as well. So maybe we can address that a little bit, and we should certainly at some point, maybe in the second round, talk about Ukraine. Not only from the perspective of impact of Nord Stream 2, which I'm sure we'll get to at some point, but also from the potential aspect of imports from Świnoujście, and I know that there is some more infrastructure that is necessary to make this happen. But let me turn to Mr. Hutchinson, to Fred. If I can, you've been watching both policy and business developments for a long time. LNG Allies is a vital catalyst for those conversations. You've been a frequent visitor to Poland. One issue that I wanted to ask maybe more directly is the issue of price. I mean, this all sounds very good, but what do we do about the price? There is a competition with the Asian market that is willing to pay more. Russian gas is still pretty cheap. So how realistic is it? Are the plans that we are talking about? And also, I mean, energy security is, of course, not only economic policy, just as Minister Naimski said. This is something that is decided by the government. So, what are the premiums, and are the premiums for energy security are worth it for looking from the United States? If you could put on your both sort of a think tank facilitator, but also U.S. company hat perspective. Fred, over to you.
Well, thank you, Dobrojan. This is, I tried to count up, and it's either my 7th or 8th trip to Poland. Katowice is nice. Warsaw is nice. My favorite was Poznan, with the 2 goats that come out of the clock at noon. Sitting and watching the goats come out of the clock at noon, drinking a beer is a pretty good way to see a historic Polish city. I am honored to be on this panel with Minister Naimski, who has far and away the best title of any government official I have ever met. Great title for a great individual. And I can tell you that I think what has changed in Poland since the last election, and really over the last couple of years, is very fundamental. You have very, very good alignment between your government and your commercial interests with respect to natural gas issues. Minister Naimski is largely responsible for that. That, I think, puts us at a point where it is worth the time and effort for companies in the United States to continue to focus on this market. There are indeed much bigger markets for U.S. LNG, China, India, Pakistan, Bangladesh, the ASEAN markets are all very important markets, but Europe, Central Europe in particular, the Western Hemisphere markets are not to be overlooked for us. LNG Allies is the trade association of the LNG exporters. We now represent 8 companies, but in addition to that, we have the support of the American Petroleum Institute, which is the largest U.S. oil and gas association. With respect to natural gas use in the United States, it's grown dramatically in recent years. As Sean said, the shale revolution has brought our energy costs down. They are at a very low level currently. Everybody's expectations are that they will stay at a very low level for a very long period of time, perhaps through 2050. So the way I like to characterize it is that in previous times, it was like when we were looking for natural gas, you were looking for a needle in a haystack. Now it's as if we found that the entire haystack is made of needles. And so you can recover a lot of resources from a lot of spots around the country, a very extensive pipeline network. It's very possible to get the LNG, the natural gas, to the primarily the Gulf of Mexico, but also to the East Coast and West Coast of the United States for export. As Sean said, we have 6 companies that have terminals that are under construction. About 40% of those trains at those 6 liquefaction factories are currently operational. The other 60% comes online primarily in 2019 and through the first quarter of 2020. Now, this is very important to get back to your point, because currently the gas that's been, so when we got involved with LNG Allies in the government of Poland, primarily through your embassy in Washington several years ago, we were at the same exact position we are currently. All of the gas from those first wave of U.S. LNG facilities was sold under long-term contracts to primarily the large gas trading companies such as Shell, BP, Centrica, Total, or the large Asian and Indian utilities or gas companies. And that situation has not really changed. In the last 4 years, we've had very few long-term contracts executed in the United States. And as a result of that, we now have another second wave, as Sean indicated, 4 more projects, as large a wave as the first wave, that are awaiting contracts in order to proceed. And the reason why they're waiting is that you have to understand that LNG development in the United States is not done by the large international oil companies. So it's not Chevron, it's not Texaco, it's not, or ConocoPhillips, it's not Exxon, with one exception in Texas. It is specialty formed companies that are fairly thinly capitalized to develop these LNG export projects. So they don't have the balance sheets to come up with the literally $7 to $10 billion or more of financing that's required to finance these projects. They'll have to go out into the both the equity market and get investment capital, plus into the debt market, and get bank financing to finance those projects. The banks in particular, will not lend to these projects unless a large part of their output is committed on long-term contracts to creditworthy counterparties. So we're at a bit of a challenging time. I'm here both to sing the praises of LNG, but to also deliver a little bit of a warning. And that is this: we're now at the point where if we don't sanction, particularly in the United States, but in other countries, very quickly, some additional LNG factories, by the time we get to about 2021, 22, 23, the world is going to be short LNG. And prices will rise, and that will have an impact on markets globally. This is almost a assured situation currently because it takes 4 to 5 years to build a project. So until you take a final investment decision, break ground and get started, you know that what the supply situation looks like. So we're headed to a supply crunch in the early 2020s. And so buyers and sellers have to find some ways to come together to kind of get back to your point. So because there are about 20 different companies in the United States, there's about 20 different business plans and ways that they intend to market that gas. So if you just simply rely on the methodology and the prices from the first mover in the market, then you don't understand fully the range of options that are available to you. So unlike Qatar or Australia or Iran or Russia, in the United States, you can own a part of the export terminal. You can own upstream gas in the United States. You can book capacity on the pipelines to move the gas to the coast. And you can lease a fleet of vessels. So it's possible to establish an LNG virtual pipeline, which has, in many respects, the same kinds of security of supply characteristics as your Baltic pipe does. And so I'm really encouraged, and in fact, we have encouraged the discussions. I've spent a long period of time with both Gazsystem and PG&IG, taking them around to our members and other LNG companies in the United States. I think we're at a really exciting threshold of something. Poland is in a very unique situation because of the size of your country, because of the alignment of your government and industry. And so I think it's really possible to have a 30 or 40 year solution, which involves U.S. LNG, U.S. gas, with Polish investments and the whole process, and so it's very exciting. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So one very quick follow-up to this, if I may, and I see more and more people coming to our panel, which is a good sign. So I want to make sure that we get back to everyone. But so you're ringing a bit of a warning bell when it comes to the financing of LNG production and exports with potential crunch by 2021. Minister Naimski talked about potential investments from Polish companies. So do you see a match here that it could be the Polish companies, Polish state-owned companies that could provide this financing needed for sustained supply of LNG from the United States?
Yeah, I do indeed. In fact, there have been numerous companies that are our members that would be extremely excited to have Poland, either Gazsystem, PG&IG, with the backing of the state. You have very low cost of financing with resources through the state. And yes, there's some really exciting possibilities. Some smaller scale facilities that might be very ideally situated and sized for this market. Very innovative, interesting floating offshore terminal where potentially Poland could buy an LNG ship, moor it at this gas station, and in the end own the asset. So there are a number of different ways to approach that, and I often hear concerns about pricing and how U.S. LNG all wants to be priced at the Henry Hub. Well, it doesn't all. I mean, we will see some price convergence between the National Balancing Point in the UK, the TTF facility in the Netherlands, the Henry Hub. We will see some convergence, I think, on those hub prices. But even more importantly, we do have some companies in the United States that are willing to price U.S. LNG at the markers that that you here in Poland and others in Europe want to see. A very good example is the Ocean LNG, which is the ExxonMobil Qatar Petroleum project. They can price to that because those two partners have projects all around the world, and they can blend that rate, and they're not risk averse. I mean, it is a risk, and somebody has to cover the risk, but there are some companies in the United States that are willing to cover the risk.
Very exciting. I see Mr. Jakubowski wanting to jump in.
If I may add something, because many words have been said about the commercial cooperation in terms of prices, as Fred mentioned before. I would like to say that recently we have signed letters of intent with, for example, Jacksonville Chamber of Commerce, with Port Arthur, with the Delphin LNG. So with the LNG representatives from the United States, who can, with whom we can share the experience, the best practices, the cooperation at the technological level. So it is worth saying that we can establish a cooperation on many levels, and as we are responsible for the infrastructure, we are not a commercial partner in this sense. So we can establish a cooperation with those LNG terminals who can become an important partner in terms of LNG deliveries in the future. So we would like to share the experience on technology, on how to reload LNG in safe way, how to expand new services based on the LNG available in Świnoujście as a gate to regional and Polish market. So there are many ways for established cooperation between the United States and Poland in terms of LNG.
Thank you very much. Mr. Naimski, would you like to jump in on this one? No. Okay, good. So really new area of cooperation with what I understand, if we really push the envelope on this one, with investments from Polish side in American infrastructure, with hopefully some Polish flags flying over there on the other side of the pond, which is a nice picture to imagine. Let me go to Mr. Schwender from a perspective of PGNiG. I mean, we talked about rozmawialiśmy o tym, jak ważna jest perspektywa PGNiG-u w tej debacie. PGNiG mógłby być jedną z firm, która inwestuje w Stanach Zjednoczonych, jest oczywiście kluczową firmą po stronie polskiej, jeżeli chodzi o zakup gazu. Jak to wygląda, jak te wszystkie sprawy, o których rozmawialiśmy, jeżeli chodzi i o cenę gazu, i o infrastrukturę, i o potencjalną współpracę, jeżeli chodzi o nawet pomysły infrastrukturalne, jak to wygląda z pozycji PGNiG-u?
Dzień dobry Państwu, Rafał Siander, PGNiG. Jak to wygląda z perspektywy spółki, która handluje gazem? Terminal działa od kilku lat. Do tej pory zrealizowaliśmy ponad 30 ładunków do Świnoujścia. Wczoraj pan prezes Piotr Woźniak miał przyjemność ogłosić, że w końcówce maja spodziewamy się kolejnego ładunku z gazem norweskim zakupionym w kontrakcie z Endesą. Można było powiedzieć, że minęło dosyć niedużo czasu, a już w tej perspektywie mamy dość istotne doświadczenia. Po pierwsze, zawarliśmy dodatkowy kontrakt na dostawę w 2017 roku na ponad 1 milion ton. W ubiegłym roku również w tym roku zawarliśmy dodatkowy kontrakt krótkoterminowy, średnioterminowy można byłoby powiedzieć, z Centriką. Przypływa do nas 4. cargo w ramach, a w zasadzie 5. można było powiedzieć, ponieważ są 3 dostawy z Norwegii, 1 dostawa ze Stanów Zjednoczonych, 1 dostawa spotowa z Qatargazu. Przygotowujemy się dosyć intensywnie do tego, aby rozwijać kompetencje, aby móc w przyszłości być jednym z istotniejszych graczy na rynku LNG, wiedząc o tym, że rynek LNG charakteryzuje się globalnymi wymiarami. Takie też mamy aspiracje, aby poczynić starania i rozwijać te kompetencje jak najszerzej. Od ubiegłego roku funkcjonuje w Londynie biuro LNG, które ma na celu właśnie pozyskanie tych kompetencji i pozyskanie jak największej spektrum kontaktów, doświadczeń, żeby można było ostatecznie sfinalizować to w perspektywie najbliższych kilku lat istotnymi z punktu widzenia spółki kontraktami. Jeżeli mówimy o cenie, to należy zaznaczyć, że od kilku lat, można byłoby powiedzieć od zeszłego roku, ceny nie podlegają w Polsce regulacjom, ale efektywnie już od blisko 2 lat nie stosujemy cen regulowanych w kontraktach z naszymi odbiorcami. Dla nas najważniejsze jest to, aby te kontrakty miały reżim opłacalności, to znaczy można było zawierać te kontrakty w taki sposób, aby charakteryzowały się dodatnią rentownością, po to też, żeby też nasi klienci, którzy kupują nas gaz, czuli satysfakcję, że są uczestnikami rynku europejskiego, posiadają konkurencyjne ceny, mogą się w oparciu o te ceny konkurencyjne rozwijać, a to oczywiście, patrząc z perspektywy rządu Polski, ma na celu również wzmocnić naszą pozycję w regionie i zwiększyć potencjał gospodarczy. Więc z naszej perspektywy każdy kontrakt, który będzie posiadał cechy rentowności, będzie zapewniał stabilność dostaw, bezpieczeństwo, jak najbardziej tak. Tutaj perspektywa jest przed nami szeroka i będziemy z tego na pewno korzystać.
Dziękuję bardzo. Chciałbym zadać jeszcze... Sorry, let me switch to English now. Chciałbym jeszcze... Sorry. Again, let me switch to English. Okay, sorry, it's so funny. I want to go back for a second to Mr. Naimski and Mr. Bennett. You know, so far the whole panel outlined a vision of Northern Gateway for Poland, made of Świnoujście focus on LNG, Baltic pipeline focus on gas from Norway, with the strategy of diversification leading then to liberalization, and Fred pointed out, and Mr. Naimski as well, in very interesting opportunities for Poland to invest directly in the United States to make this U.S. Virtual pipeline possible. So what I wanted to ask Mr. Naimski is, what do we as Poland, what you as Polish government would like to see from the United States to make this concept possible? We are talking, that's one question. We are talking about Northern Gateway. To what extent this could then lead to Poland becoming a hub for Central and Eastern Europe, potentially also with exports to Ukraine. So that's the second one. And the third little one is, how does this all get impacted by Nord Stream 2? And to Mr. Bennett, in a second, would be the flip side of the question is, you know, what do you need from Polish government, from governments in the region, and what is your thinking on the U.S. side when it comes to this? But over to Mr. Naimski.
Probably first could be useful to have in mind the scale of the operation, which is important. You know, in our country we are consuming 16, 17 BCM yearly of gas. In the region, depends what we include. It will be 40 BCM, probably 50 BCM. It depends. Comparing with production capacity in states, this is not much. Even comparing with the consumption of gas in Europe is only part. But from the original perspective, it looks completely different. You know, if we succeed, with our investments, we'll have probably 5-6 BCM of gas to be transferred through the Polish transmission system to our neighbors. Last year and 2 years ago, Ukraine bought from abroad about 11-12 BCM of gas, which would mean that if the interconnector linking Polish system with Ukrainian will be completed, will be able to deliver half of the Ukrainian import to Ukraine. And it makes difference. It also would make difference if we compare same volume, possible volume, with consumption in Slovakia or Hungary or other smaller countries toward the south. So if we are talking about 3Cs initiative in terms of natural gas logistics, we are able to imagine the infrastructure connecting countries from Romania through Hungary to Croatia, Slovakia, Czech Republic, Ukraine, Poland, and Baltic states. And having that in mind, and having possibility to achieve diversified sources and routings of supply, we are jumping to the completely different political level. Because, you see, gas strategy is not only economic, it's not only for money, it's also for politics. And if you are asking me about the role of United States in these projects, or how America could facilitate, these strategies, it's not only about LNG directly being sent from Sabine Pass to Świnoujście. It's also about persuading allies in Central Europe to jump into this overall strategy. This is important because we need infrastructure, transmission infrastructure between Croatia and Hungary, Hungary and Romania. We are, by the way, we are on a way to construct our interconnection with Slovakian system. This would mean that we'll have direct possibility to send gas from Świnoujście through Polish system to Slovakia and further down to the south to Hungary, independent from Baumgarten and independent from Ukraine. So this is what would be good. Good suggestion to American friends. If we are talking about their activity, political activity also in the region. Thank you.
Thank you very much. This is the kind of panels we like to have, with clear suggestions going both ways. This is real things happening. So before I go to Mr. Bennett, just one, just to follow up on what Mr. Naimski has said, with a clear sign of what the US could do. I mean, we are almost on the eve, not entirely on the eve, but this fall there will be a summit of the 3Cs initiative in Bucharest, and I see here Ambassador of Romania, a good friend, joining us for the panel as well. We all remember that President Trump joined the last year's summit in Warsaw. Everyone in the region has their fingers crossed that Vice President Pence will join in Bucharest. So there seemed to be a good, absolutely top level of U.S. government focus. So not to put a little bit, not to put too much of a pressure on you, but Sean, if you could tell us what is the thinking in Washington on DOE in meeting those clear both commercial but also political suggestions of U.S. getting involved in the project of really Central and Eastern Europe becoming much more integrated energy market, where U.S. could play a very significant role both commercially and politically. Over to you.
No, thank you. And again, when President Trump visited Poland here last year, he committed to securing access, again, to alternate sources of energy. And for for Poland and its neighbors, and that is something that we as Americans don't ever want to see in the European countries being held hostage from a single supplier of energy. And how do you do that? One is from production. So it is expanding production. Looking at ways to do that domestically here. I know the Mediterranean has some gas fields coming online, as well as through the LNG from the United States. But again, that takes the interconnectors. It takes the various routes and delivery supply points for the European countries, and again, it is supporting them to work together. Again, because you don't want to have choke points. You don't want to go down a path to where you have very limited options. A robust natural gas pipeline infrastructure is good for everyone. And again, as you see development change throughout the years, having the ability to put LNG facilities in different points, the options are what makes this work. And again, you mentioned Nord Stream 2. That's kind of something that again we have looked at, and I want to be clear. The United States does not seek to eliminate Russian gas from the market. That's not our opposition to Nord Stream 2 or our concern. Our priority there is helping Europe minimize the dependence on a single supplier, as I mentioned here earlier. And so, the United States supports, pro-Europe energy strategy based on diversification of fuel types, supply sources, and delivery routes. So, the U.S. concern is, Nord Stream 2 will make Europe more dependent on Russian gas and the continent less secure. It reminds me sometimes, yes, I come up with kind of stories of through history. It reminds me of the Irish potato famine. If you kind of think of this back in the 18th and 19th century, the Irish potato in late 18th century, the Irish were introduced to the potato, and it was a supplementary kind of part of their diet. But as it kind of grew, there's a lot of varieties of potatoes, and then the poor in the early 20th century, early 1900s, really focused, and that was their only supply of sustenance. It wasn't meat, it wasn't dairy, it wasn't cheeses and so forth, and grain. And so they were focused on that. The poor were focused so much on this potato, they found one sort of potato that worked the best. It yielded well, it was easy to grow. And they kind of just quit growing the other potatoes. And at the end of the day, a virus came through and wiped out all the potatoes. And then that wiped out about 1 million people in Ireland. So, that kind of story, it is, don't put all your eggs in one basket. You need diversification. And you need to make sure that this energy, again, doesn't necessarily just help the country in general, but more or less helps a lot of the poor. Because those are the ones who are held to the most difficulties when energy prices increase. So, we have to be responsible to everybody in Europe. And again, from the United States role is, how do we do that? And that is to supply energy to our friends and allies over here.
Thank you very much. I know Fred wants to jump in. I just want to point out, you said one thing that, United States is not advocating necessarily replacing whole Russian gas in Europe. We haven't touched that as much because we are focusing so much on energy, but we do have to remember that when Russia trades energy, it gets an income that it spends. When we are looking at the spending of the Russian budget, a lot of it goes for military modernization that is very much directly at back at us, at NATO, at the West. This is, this is. I think there are others who would be a little bit more happy to replace, maybe if not all, a lot of the gas as our relationship grows adversarial, and we should be mindful of where the revenues are going. Even though this is certainly not a consensus position in Europe right now, this is something to remember. Fred, I know you want to jump in, and we have more and more people in the room, which is a good sign of a good discussion. So I want to make sure that we have 25 minutes to go. But why don't you jump in for 1 second, and we'll go to the questions.
So let me just say a couple of quick things. So first of all, everybody with an LNG terminal wants to be an LNG hub, right? Everybody, every country, every terminal, everybody wants to be an LNG hub. Y'all are doing it here in Poland. Lithuania is along the way, is working. Things are working out pretty well there too. The minister's description of your interconnectors important. Frankly, I think that in Eastern Europe, the Connecting Europe fund, the CEF fund, it's paid for a lot of this. It paid for part of the costs of the pipeline interconnects, and the negotiations and the bilateral agreements that have been worked out between Lithuania and Poland and other places are leading to a point where you're going to have that network be largely complete. I wish I could be more optimistic about a southern gas terminal. I've spent a lot of time thinking of holding the hands of our friends in Croatia. And I tell you, I think it is still remains a bit of an elusive goal. Part of that, I think, comes because they had a specific set of ideas in mind as to how that would be structured. A land-based terminal of a particular size, and then a floating terminal of a particular size, without the clear commercial piece of this. Now, Poland, you took the bull by the horns and you built the terminal, assuming it would help you with your diversity, and you had the resources to do that. Croatia does not have the resources, frankly, to do that. Lithuania took the bull by the horns without any European money and brought their ship in. And now the commercial cases are developing and have to be developed. But in Croatia, the commercial case still hasn't materialized. It's not enough demand in Croatia. The demand has to come from Hungary and other places. Someone needs to aggregate that demand and make that commercial case, because even though Europe will provide part of the money for the terminal, someone still has to provide the balance, and they have to make a profit on that. And that is the part that seems to be most elusive with respect to Croatia. Now, the Greece-Bulgarian interconnect and the possibilities of an LNG terminal in Greece, that still appears like a reasonable prospect. But we'd love to see the Three Seas initiative completed. Again, I just wish I could be more optimistic about the terminal in Croatia.
Thank you very much. Let me open it up. We have great people in the room. If you can just introduce yourself briefly. I'm sure we all know you, but just for the people that don't, and if you could direct your question or comment to more specific members of the panel, that'd be great. I have Ambassador Ovidiu Dranga first, and then a gentleman in the back second. Ambassador, maybe you can just project. Is there any microphone? Well, or let me walk over with a microphone.
Thank you very much. Ovidiu Dranga, Ambassador of Romania to Poland. Thank you very much to all panelists for their excellent interventions and fantastic discussion about energy. Let me turn a little bit to the issue that was raised by the moderator at the beginning, the geopolitics of energy. We all know what's at stake in some countries. Energy could become, or for some countries, energy could become easily a weapon. And weaponizing energy is something that we should obviously avoid. Now, my question would be addressed to all panelists, if I may. It is about the Black Sea. recently, according to official data, in the Black Sea area, in the part controlled by Romania, 200 billion cubic meters of gas have been discovered, and they will be commercially available in a matter of years. And that would produce for the Romanian government revenues maybe around $2 billion per year for the next 20 years. Which is something. I mean, quite recently, I would say, in a matter of years, as I mentioned, Romania would become a provider of gas in this region. My question would be, given the fact that a lot of other suppliers are already or prepared to enter the Central European market, actually the European Union market, I'm wondering whether energy could become a divisive issue in the transatlantic discussion between the European Union and the United States. Is this the point? Is this a possibility? Or if this is a possibility, what can we do to avoid that from happening? Because we have a lot of other issues on our common agenda, and we should not put energy as a divisive item. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Let me take one more question, given that if there is... thank you so much. I don't know
John Armstrong, jestem radcą do spraw ekonomicznych w ambasadzie amerykańskiej. To najpierw po polsku, a potem po angielsku, jeżeli tłumaczy chcą chwilę odpocząć. To właśnie moje komentarze są bardziej komentarz niż pytanie do pana ministra Naimskiego. Panie ministrze, Stany Zjednoczone Ameryki są otwarte na polskich inwestorów, między innymi w sektorze gazowym. Proszę bardzo, zachęcamy. Druga rzecz, jeżeli chodzi o inicjatywę Trójmorze, to jest priorytet dla mojego rządu, dla rządu Stanów Zjednoczonych w tej części Europy. I bardzo zachęcamy do konkretnych projektów, między innymi jeżeli chodzi o tych łącz gazowych. To popieramy, to jest priorytet. Przecież sam mój szef, prezydent Trump, czyli drugi szef, bo naród amerykański jak naprawdę jest moim pierwszym szefem, przyjechał, jak pan doskonale wie, w lipcu. Popieramy inicjatywy Trójmorza i zachęcamy konkretyzację, między innymi w projektach gazowych. A trzecia rzecz to właśnie a propos Nord Stream 2. Nasze stanowisko jest znane, uważamy to za projekt polityczny, a nie ekonomiczny, a wnioski z tego są oczywiste. And for all of those who don't love Polish as much as I do, or Romanian as much as I do, the English version is, we're open for American investment. Come on, bring on over, gas sector's open. Bring those Polish companies over. Who knows? Maybe they'll join the LNG allies when they after they invest. The 3Cs initiative, it's a priority for the United States government, for my government, as President Trump showed when he was here last summer in July. But we really urge, come down to concrete projects. It's great so far, but let's get, let's break some ground. And one of those things is clearly the interconnections in gas. And finally, Nord Stream 2, our position is well known. We believe it's a political project, not an economic one. And the conclusions from that are clear for everybody in this room and everyone else who might be listening. Dziękuję bardzo. Thank you very much. Mulțumesc de mult.
Thank you very much. Let me... we will have a chance for a second round. Let me go to the panel. So just a reminder, first question from Ambassador Dranga about European, US potential tension around energy and energy security. And then both the comments and questions. And I know that there is a lot of work going on in Romania in trying to concretize, and in Warsaw, the projects around 3Cs. And I fully agree that we need to have specifics coming up for the next summit. Let's start with Minister Naimski.
First, I would like to thank you very much, John, for this invitation to America. I believe that, at least some of those projects will result in something substantial. If you are talking about or asking for specific projects for the 3C initiatives, I may say that we in Poland, we are on a good way to finalize our job and our part. If we are talking about these natural gas projects, because the north-south transmission infrastructure, together with interconnections to neighboring countries, will be completed, and this is on the way. This is not on a, I mean, just the project right now. We are doing this, so this is under construction. If we are thinking about other projects, just on the margin, if I may say, for 3Cs initiatives, there are some. For example, we are on a way to build roads, highways, infrastructure. I mean, specific highway between Baltic states, Poland, down there to the south, which is on a good track. And also there are projects for railways, and recently there are some ideas of constructing infrastructure connected with railroads and roads and highways, which is feasible and probably really needed. Answering Ambassador question, I don't think this is important, I mean, crucial point. We know that probably Romania will become exporter of the natural gas. If so, and if we have this transmission infrastructure between south and north, it will be important part of this possible East or Central European natural gas hub, because it will be another source of diversification, which is crucial. Infrastructure and sources, these are crucial elements of any hub in practice. So we'll have your gas, we'll have gas from the north through Poland. We may have some, probably some others. I don't want to go too deep, and we'll be able to create a real free liberal gas market in the region, which is on a practical political level, I believe something which is also important for our American allies on a political level, because it counts. As I said, export from American producers to the region, comparing with the productivity of the American gas sector, will not be substantial. So if we are talking about this cooperation, we have to think simultaneously about economics and politics. And probably politics will prevail.
Well, listen, to your point, Mr. Ambassador, let me give you the selfish American perspective, right? So I can tell you as one selfish American that I want Romania to develop every drop of your own gas that you can develop. I want Mozambique to develop every drop of their own gas, and Argentina, and every other country around the world that has indigenous resources. It's best for your country if you develop your indigenous resources, and perhaps you will be competitors of ours in the marketplace. It is an important market development to bring that gas online, and we're going to announce the World Gas Conference in June, and a global natural gas coalition of consuming countries, producing countries, associations, as well as individual companies. And we think gas is a great complement for renewables. We think it's got a great future for the planet, and we welcome your entry. So.
Yeah, and again, from the federal perspective, the oil and gas industry in the United States, it's privatized. It's we're talking about purely capitalistic free market thinking there. The government's role is just in permitting the exports of LNG. As far as making it a political weapon or getting into the geopolitics of natural gas, that is not the U.S. government's role or intention. We want our neighbors, and as Fred said, exactly right. From the Department of Energy's perspective, we've done a lot of R&D, research and development, in shale gases. We want the world to use that research and development. It is important to us that, it's about diversification, as I said earlier. We want to see our neighbors and allies thrive and develop their own resources. It's an all-the-above energy portfolio that's going to move everyone ahead. So, again, we are not looking to, get into that. There are a lot of other markets out there. It's not going to be an extreme market that we see here in Europe, as he mentioned. But we're there to offer an option, a choice. That is really our role in the LNG exports arena. And at the end of the day, if it is not economical for the private companies who develop the oil and gas in the United States, then they would not export it. So we would not look to try to artificially inflate prices, artificially deflate prices. We are about the free market capitalist approach, and that's what we want to see rule the day.
Well, just couple of remarks. What Fred said just before. Yes, we would like to become also a gas hub if it's possible, and there are some certain aspects and certain projects that we are following to achieve this goal. First of all, yes, we are working on sources. We are working on the infrastructure. In terms of infrastructure, we are in process of developing of the existing LNG facility in Świnoujście. That can be a kind of a gate for the LNG, the U.S. LNG available for domestic market, but as well as for neighboring markets. Gas system is developing interconnectors with, as I said, with Lithuania, Ukraine, Slovakia, Czech Republic. We would like to cooperate, and we're still looking for partners from all around in terms of creation LNG terminal. Just to give you an example. So yes, we are creating the possibilities. We are creating opportunities for market players to step in to bring their LNG, which can be available for regional market. So about the cooperation between the United States and Poland. Fred, do you mind if there will be an invitation for LNG allies? Certainly, we will consider it. But what I would like to point out is the LNG terminal, the existing one in Świnoujście. This is the first onshore LNG terminal in the region, and we are determined to expand its possibilities, because there are many options available here, and the market will be more and more developed. At this moment, we can cover 1/3 of our domestic needs. We will expand the regasification power for LNG terminal to be able to cover about 50% of our domestic needs. But what is also more important, the Świnoujście can be a logistical point for LNG available in any way. Just to give you an example, in the Baltic Basin, in Sweden and Finland, there's a number of LNG projects of small scale, and they have to be feeded from a significant source, and Świnoujście can play a extremely important role of being a local source for those projects. We would like to establish the service to reload, as Mr. Naimski said, possibility to reload LNG to railway, just to be available in those places where there is a logistical possibility to deliver LNG to those customers who can use the railway. So there are many ways to develop the regional gas market, to increase competition and to create possibilities for cooperation between neighboring partners. What we need is more sources, and what we need is more infrastructure. So as infrastructure side, I can only confirm, yes, we are determined to deliver very specific list of projects available from 2022. This is a very crucial date for our regional market, and certainly we will do that.
Fantastic. We have time for one more round. If you could just introduce yourself, and this is going to be, if you could direct it, because this will be then the final round.
My name is Andrea Bekic. I'm ambassador of Croatia. And first of all, let me say how delighted I am to hear Three Seas initiative so much present as a concept and as a source of ideas for different infrastructural and economic projects in your discussion today. I would like also to address a question to Mr. Hutchinson and possibly to other speakers, since you have expressed doubts about the feasibility and of the project of LNG terminal in Croatia. You have mentioned some conceptual mistakes while planning for this terminal, either on land or as a floating terminal. So I would just like to ask you, do you have maybe some concrete ideas for some other maybe more realistic and achievable options? Thank you.
Thank you very much. Are there any other questions? Facilitating the regional aspect. So the question is there appetite in Washington, and maybe what needs to be done to make this happen? Gentlemen from the private sector, jump in on whatever aspect you would like of the discussion so far, and maybe then the last question to Mr. Naimski, if we can finish with you, but maybe at the very end. I feel like we've been sort of, I know that I'm being think tankish, sort of provocative, but we've been jumping around the Nord Stream 2. And let me, the direct question is, everything that we talked about, how is it impacted? Can this work if Nord Stream 2 is built? So let's start with Fred, Sean, finishing with Mr. Names.
Well, Madam Ambassador, let me start by apologizing if I have in any way have offended you. I am 100% a supporter of the Kirk Island terminal and facility. And I literally have probably spent a month of my life in the last 3 years thinking about, worrying about, and trying to figure out how that might happen. I do have a very concrete suggestion, and I think it is a suggestion that's worth carrying forward into, frankly, some other things in the region, and it's really this. If you look at the development of the history of large oil and gas projects around the world, the super major companies get together and collaborate in joint ventures everywhere. And they're an order of magnitude or two greater than what's necessary and needed in this region. So what's needed in this region, in my opinion, is joint ventures that involve Gaz System and PGNiG, and that involve MOL, and they involve Achema, the big fertilizer producer in Lithuania, and Azoti, and Orlen, and Latos, and the major companies in this region ought to think about a consortium, a commercial consortium. And it could involve others from the United States. It could involve our companies, such as Sempra and Tellurian and the others that we represent. Form a commercial consortium. Find some ways commercially to make these things work, because that's all that project has really ever required, is a commercial basis with committed off-takers who are willing to commit to take the gas and then produce enough of a profit so that whoever has to come up with that additional 200 million euros can get their money back in building the project. So we think it's an essential part to get there. But so you've got the assets here in the region, in my opinion, with these wonderful, well-run, profitable, smart companies. Let's think about seeing if we can duplicate what the majors do.
Thank you very much. We are a little bit over time, but this is too important to just end here. So let's finish up with our discussion. Mr. Bennett?
Well, in regard to your question, I would say that you're getting a little bit out of my role as a government official here, but
I'm sorry I'm pushing, but yes.
I understand. But it's about cooperation, and that's what's important. And it is identifying those early adopters, those countries who want to start this conversation. And again, I think that is something that again, it was echoed in our President Trump's comments when he visited Poland here last year. It's about getting everyone together and moving forward. And those are conversations that our Department of State would be, more than happy to have. But, I think it is trying to find out what countries are the early adopters, the innovators, the ones who are going to start bringing everyone in, and really reaching out to the Department of State and see how that is to move forward and what role there is for the United States to play in, trying to help, again, create a bolstering infrastructure of natural gas. Because as I said, it's not just about where the gas is coming from. I love that Romania is developing in the Black Sea because it's about diversity of producers of product. It's about diversity of pipelines. It is just frankly about diversity. And the more that we can have those conversations, the more it becomes a regional approach, the better it is for Europe and our allies. And that's what's very important to us.
Thank you very much. Mr. Świątek?
Switch again in Polish. Z perspektywy PGNiG-u jesteśmy w zasadzie w większości projektów. Jesteśmy w projekcie funkcjonowania terminala. Mamy w tej chwili zarezerwowane 100% zdolności regasyfikacyjnych. Jesteśmy także w projekcie budowy połączenia z norweskim szelfem kontynentalnym, ze źródłami, które również mamy ambicje w tamtym regionie rozwijać, aby móc właśnie zdywersyfikować źródła dostaw. Tak jak pan minister powiedział, dywersyfikacja jest niezwykle istotna, a tak na samym końcu tego łańcucha jest to, o czym wspomniałem wcześniej, kwestia ceny, która właśnie w wyniku tej dywersyfikacji ma szansę być konkurencyjna. Jeżeli będzie miała szansę być konkurencyjna, nasza gospodarka też będzie się odpowiednio rozwijała, też będzie miała szersze perspektywy, też będzie miała szansę rozwijać się na poszczególne regiony, o czym świadczy też nasza aktywność. W tej chwili właśnie to, o czym wspomniałem, na rynku LNG z powodzeniem kontraktujemy nowe ładunki, przywozimy je do Świnoujścia. Jesteśmy również na Ukrainie, sprzedajemy tam dosyć znaczące ilości. Perspektywa rozwoju tej części regionu stwarza dosyć istotne szanse na to, żeby stać się istotnym, znaczącym i ważnym graczem dla całego regionu, co w konsekwencji ma na celu przełożenie się na bezpieczeństwo, na atrakcyjność, na konkurencyjność tego akurat surowca, który, jak widzimy, będzie miał szansę się rozwijać jeszcze w perspektywie następnych kilkunastu lat.
I would like to just confirm that we are following the strategy agenda that Mr. Naimski described very briefly. We are determined to establish a physical connection with the Norwegian shelf. We will expand the LNG terminal in Świnoujście, and in terms of US-Polish cooperation, I would like to confirm that as we launched a month ago cooperation at the technical level with LNG partners from the States, we've signed the letters in Houston. We are determined to deliver more options for LNG market to be available here in Poland and in the regional context. And just keep your fingers crossed for strategic projects which are very, very important for the regional market, for diversification and for security of supply and developing the local cooperation between partners.
Thank you very much. Minister Naimski, also if you could close it with what we need to do next, besides the political aspect of it. Leave us with something, with a homework to do.
All right. So So we are back with the second Nord Stream issue. I may say that if second Nord Stream pipeline or two pipelines will be completed, the dominant position of Gazprom as suppliers will be really solidified in the region. 55 BCM of gas will be sent directly through Opal and Jugel to Baumgarten and down there to the south to Central European countries. For those countries, I am afraid it will be the final stage of the dream about diversification. And it will be final victory for Gazprom on Balkans. For Poland, will be different. We have our own, I may say, offensive strategy. We are building Baltic Pipe, and we will be able to supply Polish economy with diversified gas from different than Russian sources and different routes. But in a sense, we'll stay as a kind of an island being surrounded by Russian pipelines and Russian suppliers. This is not a good idea to have it. Homework. Let us do what we are doing. Let us be persistent. Let us, and God helps us.
The stakes are certainly very high in this discussion, and it's certainly not something that is going to leave us. The fact that we have more and more people coming to the room is a sign of really fascinating conversation. I know that we could be talking even more, but I think it's better to finish with the homework. So please join me in thanking our fantastic panelists. And see you next time. Enjoy Katowice, and then when you are back in Warsaw, come and visit us at GMF in Warsaw. Thanks.